This was how the Botox Cowboys lived despite ruining lives with their bad batches of Botox. And she completely made up a fake story of some guy hitting her just for attention and to run a GoFundMe scam. She posed as a teenager to lure teenage boys. And she found a cop suffering a heart attack, so she stole his wallet. Let's find out some more of the most despicable criminals we covered in 2024 in this marathon video. Who are some people who do the most despicable crimes? Let's find out, starting with number 6, Botox Cowboys. A raid led by the Manchester, England Police and the Medicines and Healthcare Product Regulatory Agency, known as the MHRA, confiscated a Ferrari, Rolex watches, and £50,000 in cash in connection with a group called the Botox Cowboys. Operation Striker targeted individuals believed to be importing illegal and potentially harmful beauty products, including 10,000 unlicensed vials of Botox, fillers, and numbing agents. The products, originating from South Korea, were found stashed in a storage unit and were intended to be sold on social media and various websites or directly to salons that undercut legitimate clinics. A red and black Ferrari F12 Berlinetta seized during the raid became a symbol of the lifestyle enjoyed by those involved in the illicit trade, along with the £50,000 in cash, really showing how lucrative the illegal beauty product market is. And the criminals behind the operation weren't merely peddling knockoff luxury goods either. Like, yeah, it sucks to unknowingly buy a knockoff purse or something, but these substances could pose serious health risks. Botox is a powerful substance used for anti-wrinkle treatments. In this case, the unlicensed products hadn't undergone the necessary quality checks, making them potentially dangerous. The MHRA head of enforcement talked about the global nature of the trade and how it exploits people's insecurities. He said that these criminal enterprises are primarily motivated by huge profits, showing a blatant disregard for the safety of consumers. He went on to say that the confiscated products, if unlicensed, carry unknown risks, turning the act of using them into a form of Russian roulette. We know, you're surprised too. Who would have thought that criminals do bad things to get money and that they don't care about other people? The raid was part of a broader effort to combat the flourishing trade of unregulated beauty products, which often bypass safety measures and quality checks. Despite the ban on certain procedures for individuals under 18, the beauty industry is full of risks, with criminal organizations finding new and creative ways to exploit legal loopholes. The criminals behind these operations all seem to share a common theme. They don't care at all about people getting hurt, and they always prioritize profits over the well-being of their clientele. They're toxic. Number 5, the psychopath. Andrew Merritt is a serial criminal with a staggering 118 past convictions. We're sure that number is going to just keep going up. He was sentenced to 4 years in jail for robbing an unnamed disabled man in the UK. Merritt approached the elderly victim, an 88-year-old pensioner, in a motorized scooter and robbed him of £1,100. Yeah, there are people like this guy walking around. The whole thing went down when Merritt asked the kind pensioner if he could spare £2. Surprisingly, the elderly man, out of the goodness of his heart, took out his wallet and handed over £3 and some change. However, the situation took a turn as CCTV footage captured Merritt hugging the pensioner before callously grabbing his wallet and walking away with a smile. As the vulnerable victim pleaded for the return of his money, Merritt heartlessly counted the large sum of £20 banknotes inside the wallet. Merritt decided to keep the cash and callously discarded the wallet nearby. The entire incident unfolded on a public street, and witnesses who came to the elderly man's aid immediately contacted the police. In an attempt to evade detection, Merritt stopped at a doorway to change his t-shirt. Despite his clever attempt at trickery, a police officer recognized him from the video footage anyway, leading to his subsequent arrest. Body cam footage captured Merritt being arrested while lying on his bed 6 days after the robbery. Like, what was he expecting with that? No, officer, that wasn't me. That man was wearing a white shirt. Mine has stripes. During a police interview, Merritt brazenly denied stealing the money, claiming that the elderly man had agreed to buy a bike off of him. However, the evidence against him was overwhelming, and Merritt eventually pleaded guilty to the charge of robbery. In addition to the 4-year jail term, Merritt received a criminal behavior order prohibiting him from entering the town center for 4 years. He was also ordered to pay a £228 victim surcharge. Seriously, is there any way we can just toss this guy in the trash? Number 4. The Stockbroker. Sam Whittingslow was sentenced to 3 years in jail for an investment scheme that targeted a wealthy businesswoman in her 50s. Whittingslow, from the UK, had known his victim, Jill Kelly, since childhood. He exploited their relationship, and he manipulated her into investing over £500,000 in a fake investment. The scam involved Whittingslow creating online personas, posing as senior investment managers with promises of doubling returns. He convinced Miss Kelly to invest in bonds and got her to further invest on behalf of her grandchildren. In reality, Whittingslow was merely an assistant at a stockbroking firm. Whittingslow's victims, including Miss Kelly and her friends, entrusted him with a total of £775,600. However, only £96,941 was ever repaid. The fraudster spent the money on lavish holidays abroad and online gambling, leaving his victims in financial ruin. Miss Kelly, a successful businesswoman with a lot of money, fell prey to Whittingslow's deceit. The con man, who had initiated an intimate relationship with her, used their personal connection to gain her confidence. Whittingslow's activities extended beyond Miss Kelly, ensnaring additional victims such as businessman Nigel Williams and Anthony Orrell and his daughter Grace. The court revealed that these individuals lost significant amounts with little to no returns on their investments. When Miss Kelly attempted to withdraw from the scheme, she was coerced into paying an additional £80,000. The investigation uncovered that Whittingslow had employed fake online profiles named Karen Wilson and David Brad to trick his victims into believing they were dealing with reputable investment managers. Upon discovery of the scam, Whittingslow was reported to the police, leading to his arrest. In court, he admitted to 5 counts of fraud by representation over 2.5 years, getting him his 3-year sentence. That's what he gets for scamming someone he's known since he was a kid. Number 3. Stealing from mom. Victoria Rosado was accused of stealing over $52,000 from her elderly mother, Deborah King. The unemployed daughter faced charges of exploitation of the elderly, with authorities revealing that Rosado spent a substantial portion of the money on party supplies. We think you know what that is. And she also bought a Lexus for her alleged party supplier. The investigation began after being prompted by a Department of Children and Families inquiry into possible exploitation. Deputies discovered that King's health had deteriorated significantly after a fall, leading to her hospitalization. Medical professionals identified severe alcohol withdrawals and concerns about her mental decline due to age and alcoholism arose. As detectives probed into the financial transactions, it was revealed that large sums of money had vanished from her bank account. Withdrawals, including a substantial $6,500 in cash from ATMs, were made without King's clear recollection or understanding. Rosado claimed she had permission and knew her mother's debit card PIN number, which might explain 1 or 2 transactions, right? But the exploitation escalated, with roughly $35,000 disappearing within 30 days from an account that initially held $35,900. Rosado apparently used $7,500 of her mother's funds to purchase a 2008 Lexus. By April, she had transferred the vehicle's title to Kelsey McFoley, a suspected dealer with a long criminal record. He sounds like a great guy too. Can you imagine what magic would be created if these two ever had a child? Number 2. Honey trapped. Dating scammer Gemma Frost spared no efforts in orchestrating a chilling plot to kidnap and rob a trusting man she met online. Frost initiated the honey trap by luring her victim, Christopher Stanley, on a dating app. After engaging in conversation, she strategically asked him for a loan of £210. Unbeknownst to Stanley, this seemingly harmless request was the beginning of a sinister plan. Discovering that Stanley had life savings, Frost decided to kidnap and rob him, bringing in two mysterious accomplices. The trap was set into motion when Frost arranged to pick up Stanley for a face-to-face date. However, as they drove down a street, two masked men approached the vehicle. To Stanley's shock, Frost steered towards the curb, stopping near the ominous figures. The two men, one dressed in a surgical gown and mask, and the other in a hooded tracksuit, approached the car and opened the door. That's never a good sign. Stanley knew that it was time to run and try to get out of the car, but the two guys tried to grab him, attempting to force him into the back of the car as he tried to escape. Stanley managed to break free, falling onto the pavement in the process, got away unharmed. The two men then got into the vehicle and Frost sped away. Following the incident, Stanley, understandably shaken, reported the terrifying encounter to authorities. Video footage traced the car back to Frost's residence, leading to her arrest. In court, she admitted her role in the conspiracy to kidnap and was subsequently sentenced to an 18-month suspended prison term. Frost said she was at a low point in her life and was spending a lot of time with dudes that had pretty hefty criminal backgrounds. She claimed that the two men had coerced her into participating in the robbery after discovering Stanley had loaned her money, leaving her too scared to refuse. Honey trap incidents like these are becoming more and more commonplace, so it's crucial for all of you to be careful and take precautions before inviting strangers into your home or letting someone you just met drive you somewhere. Number 1. Honey Trapped 2. We've got another honey trap story for you, and this one involves Surpreet Dillon and Temedeo Ah. They orchestrated a chilling plot that led to the passing of a man named Saul Murray. The two women, along with male accomplices Ikram Afia and Cleon Brown, devised a plan to steal Murray's Rolex watches after seeing his flaunting posts on Instagram using a honey trap. Honey traps are when an attractive person is typically used in espionage as a lure to gather information or to commit a crime. Think kind of like Black Widow before she became a good guy. Wolves actually do something similar when hunting farm dogs. They'll use a female wolf to lure the dog away from its home, acting all playful. Once the dog gets too far away, the other wolves surround it, and the situation takes a turn. Wolves are scary. Anyway, Dillon initiated the trap after exchanging messages with Murray and traveling from London to his location. Ah joined the scheme, and the group met Murray for drinks at his home. The plan involved spiking Murray's brandy. However, the dosage wasn't enough to knock him out, causing Ah to leave and bring in the two male accomplices. Surveillance footage captured a horrifying sequence of events, showing two men entering the property, one brandishing an edged weapon. Murray was found in his flat the following day, succumbing to a wound that had pierced an artery. An investigation revealed that the Rolex watches weren't all that the group was after, but Murray had just recently moved into the apartment, so there wasn't anything else for them to grab yet. The police, relying on various sources, managed to figure out what exactly happened and made their arrests. Dillon, who appeared to be the main bad guy, was sentenced to 10 years for manslaughter and 10 years for conspiracy to commit robbery. Ah received a 7-year sentence for her involvement in the plot. Afia, identified through a distinctive 1,300-pound designer coat he was spotted wearing, faced a life sentence with a minimum term of 25 years. Brown received an 11-year sentence. Sadly, Dillon was seen on camera assuring her kid that she would be home in a few weeks and denied any involvement in the crime, claiming she was only helping the authorities. Sure, she knew she was lying and was getting probably less than she deserved, but your heart can't help but go out to that kid who didn't choose to be born to a mom like her. Dillon admitted to targeting 6 men in similar honey traps. One of the saddest parts of this story is, remember those Rolex watches that initially attracted the group's attention? They were fake, meaning that this guy's passing was even more senseless. It's weird to think that somehow, because the watches were fake, it's like worse. Like it somehow would be better if at least the things were real, but instead, this guy passed away because he was bragging about fake watches. Who are a few of the most despicable criminals around? Let's find out, starting with Number 6. Alyssa Zinger. 23-year-old Florida woman Alyssa Zinger posed as a teenager just so that she could get her way with middle schoolers and young boys. And she was extremely successful at it. In fact, she had inappropriate relations with one boy more than 30 times, which is kind of a bit excessive, even for a criminal. Zinger had an online persona that was completely different from reality. She claimed that she was a homeschooled teenager on Snapchat, and she used this persona to victimize many young schoolboys who didn't know any better. She was like a reverse honey trap because instead of catching criminals, she was catching victims. Zinger had a whole sick gig going on Snapchat, and we don't mean sick in a good way. According to the police, she was intimate with a schoolboy as young as 12, and then sent inappropriate videos to loads of other young boys. It wasn't just a one-time tryst either. She actually dated the boy in question. And until her arrest, he really believed that he was being intimate with a 14-year-old, not someone way older. In fact, if she hadn't been caught at the time she was, she probably would have wrought more havoc and gotten more victims. Zinger might have been able to fool middle school boys, but she was less successful when she tried that same trick with police officers. Before she was caught, Zinger and her victim had been caught shoplifting. After their arrest, they were asked to identify themselves, and Zinger gave her real name, but claimed she was born in 2009 instead of 2001. The police looked her up and didn't find anyone bearing her name born in 2009. However, they found someone with her name who was born in 2001. Our gal tried to claim it was her half-sister, but that lie didn't hold up. Probably because the police officers weren't middle schoolers. Anyway, Zinger was arrested. Once she was caught, 4 other potential victims came out and have now accused Zinger of even more ratchet, inappropriate behavior. Seriously, middle school? Number 5, weekend at Wilding's. Caroline Hurling has been sentenced to 20 years in prison after fraudulently taking over a property and then disemboweling a body and eventually dumping the remains in San Francisco Bay. The story is as crazy as it sounds. Hurling was a career criminal, and in theory, her job was easy. All she had to do was use online mapping programs to look for abandoned houses in affluent neighborhoods. She often visited these neighborhoods and examined her chosen houses herself. After getting her mark, she would plan an elaborate heist that often resulted in the owner of the house losing the property or losing valuables in it. In this case, Hurling chanced upon a fancy home in the Los Angeles neighborhood of Sherman Oaks, where a 71-year-old man named Charles Wilding lived. Caroline and her associates broke into the home and discovered Wilding had already passed away. For regular dumb criminals, this would be assigned to flee the scene. But Caroline wasn't regular. Where others saw tragedy, she saw opportunity. Rather than report his passing, Caroline and her crime friend looted the property of all its valuables. But because that wasn't enough for greedy Caroline, she forged a document saying that Wilding had given her power of attorney. She presented this at the police station and banks and used that document to loot Wilding's accounts and sell his house. But Caroline still didn't stop there. Wilding was listed as the heir and beneficiary to a $1.7 million estate. So Caroline used her fake power of attorney to assume ownership of that fortune as well. Since she claimed she was a trustee for Wilding, all the property fell under her control. Eventually, Wilding's neighbors, feeling something was fishy, reported him as missing, which prompted an investigation. When Hurling was asked about the whereabouts of Wilding, she simply said he had moved to Carpinteria, a small town just south of Santa Barbara, and that was that. So what did Hurling do with Wilding's body while all this was going on? Well, Caroline and her associates first moved the body to her apartment and tried to dissolve it in a chemical concoction, Breaking Bad style. When that failed, apparently they weren't good chemists, they took out their trusty saws and, well, you can probably figure that out. Then they dumped those pieces in the San Francisco Bay. As of this video, the body has yet to be recovered. The funny thing, well, more like the excessive thing, is that Caroline was a pretty effective multitasker. While she was doing all of this at Wilding's place, she still found the time to scam a man named Robert Taskin by selling his home without his consent. This time she had a co-conspirator who posed like Taskin and had a fake ID. Anyway, Caroline is now in police custody and has been sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. Sounds like she's not going to be squatting again anytime soon. Number 4. Horrible bosses. Frank Santora and Anthony Piscina stole about $20,000 in wages from the employees at their New York pizzeria, Grimaldi's, and then bragged about the theft because they're clearly low-quality people. When one of the victims of their theft confronted them, the men replied that the police weren't gonna do nothing. The men bragged they had been reported to the authorities 3 other times and nothing ever came out of it. Until it finally did. Santora and Piscina weren't even clever with their cheating ways. They hired workers and goaded them into working by only paying half salaries and missing payment dates. Sometimes they even broke the law by paying less than minimum wage. One of their employees was employed for less than $10 per hour, which is lower than the prevailing minimum wage. After doing that, the duo scammed that employee out of $8,000 in wages. Sometimes employees would plead with Santora and Piscina for their checks, but they would get checks that bounced. Sometimes they would be promised payments on certain dates and then would be ghosted afterwards. And the evil doofuses made sure they paid just enough to keep their employees working for them. One day, after years of being victimized, an employee told them that they would be reported to the police. The employee was told to kick rocks and that the police would never pay them any mind. And most times, they'd be right. But this time, they were wrong. The entire scheme came crumbling down when a couple of employees reported them to the police and they were finally arrested. Now Santora and Piscina have been charged in the Manhattan Supreme Court and indicted on a scheme to defraud and failure to pay wages in accordance with the labor law. Number 3. The lie in Dubai. Shaun White claimed that she was a wealthy medical lawyer with a rich father and then used her fake status to scam an NHS worker out of thousands of dollars after tricking him into re-signing for a fake social media job in Dubai. By the time White was done with this guy she had met on Tinder, he was jobless, broke, and homeless. The scam itself was chaotic. It didn't seem like White had any grand plan to escape the consequences of her actions and just made it up as she went. After meeting her victim on Tinder, White claimed that she was a wealthy medical lawyer with a millionaire father who had millions in real estate. The two eventually met in person and began a relationship. The victim soon got really close with White and wanted to cement their relationship by moving closer to her. White then started communicating with her victim as Dave, a fictional father character that she had invented. Through her Dave character, she was able to procure a fake apartment for her victim. Then, just a few days after moving into the apartment, White convinced her victim to resign from his NHS job and move all the way to Dubai with her for a dodgy social media job. Before they even left, White made sure to scam her victim out of hundreds of dollars for fake tickets. Once they got to Dubai, White continued her scam by inventing more fake characters to interact with her victims. She invented an HR person for the fake job and even a fake manager. The victim only found out that the entire gig was a sham when he got a call from his so-called property manager and learned that his apartment wasn't really an apartment, but was actually just a 30-day rental taken out by White. By the time the guy realized the extent of the scam White pulled, he was homeless, jobless, and broke. Of course, White was promptly arrested. Her trial revealed that she had a long rap sheet of dishonest behavior, which ranged from scamming students out of their rent, stealing from her roommates, and refusing to pay hotel fees. White is now off the streets as she has been sentenced to 2 years in jail and must complete 150 hours of unpaid work and rehabilitation requirements, which, considering the amount of damage she caused this poor guy, seems a bit light, doesn't it? Number 2. Compromising positions. Steve Waith tricked more than 50 women into sharing their compromising photos with him in a scheme that's pretty despicable. This guy worked as a track and field coach for several universities and used his position as coach to target women and get compromising photos from them. Waith had a two-pronged approach to committing these crimes. First, he created several fake social media accounts and texted women claiming that he had found compromising photos of them on the internet. He would then offer to help them get the photos removed, but they would have to send him even more compromising pictures of themselves. He said he could use them for a reverse search that would expose everywhere their photos had been leaked. The women sent these photos thinking gross Steve was doing them a favor. Little did they know that they were just unsuspecting victims in his little dirty scheme. The second way he got these pictures is by inventing female personas and getting pictures from women by claiming that the pictures were going to be used for athlete research or body redevelopment. The incredible thing was that even getting arrested didn't stop Steve sympathy from his sick ways. After his initial arrest, he still continued to text women and get pictures from them under false premises. Around half a dozen of his victims spoke at his sentencing, and they urged the court to give him the stiffest possible sentence. But Clever Steve told the court that the testimony of his victims had impacted him more than any punishment could, and that he has now learned his lesson and wanted a lenient judgment. The judge heard all of this and was like, Waite was eventually sentenced to 5 years in prison, where hopefully there'll be some compromising positions as well. Number 1. The sister-in-law. Reshma Massaron wanted to put her brother-in-law 6 feet under, so she hired someone to take him out. And we don't mean on a nice romantic date. Unfortunately, for the amateur crime boss, that hit didn't quite happen, and she soon ended up in handcuffs. Reshma, who has 2 young kids and works as a bank manager, had a grand plan to settle a civil litigation she had with her brother-in-law. And that grand plan involved hastening his funeral through the easiest means known to man. But instead of contracting some other stranger to do this crazy job, this criminal mastermind instead contacted a police officer she knew in Guyana, where her brother-in-law was vacationing. That police officer was a friend to her brother-in-law and had also worked as his security guard for a while. So the guy was probably shocked when Reshma asked him to put her brother-in-law down, but he agreed and told her that he would contact a professional to do the job. He told her that the job would cost her $10,000, and Reshma argued for a $2,500 initial payment, which she quickly made through Western Union. And before she paid the man, she told him that if he took care of her business, he would be a rich man. 3 days after making her payment, her supposed contractor, who was meant to help her in accomplishing her mission, actually told her brother-in-law about the plot. The brother-in-law then reported the case to the U.S. Embassy in Guyana. Through all of this, Reshma continued talking to this police officer, who kept assuring her that the job would be done any day now. Of course, the job would never be accomplished because the police officer, who was meant to arrange everything, was actually cooperating with other police. In the end, our wannabe mafia don eventually was arrested. She really thought she could hire a policeman to commit a crime and get away with it. Why she'd choose a police officer, as corrupt as some may be in other countries, as well as a friend of the potential victim, is something we don't understand. And how severe could this lawsuit have possibly been that it was worth $10,000 and someone's life? At the time of this video, she's facing down a possible 10 years in prison. Maybe she can contact the warden's best friend to see about smuggling some stuff into prison too. Who are the most despicable criminals around? Let's find out, starting with number 6, Casa de Fraud. Ruby Corrado, the once celebrated founder of Casa Ruby, a multicultural LGBTQ+ community center and social services organization based in Washington, D.C., found herself in hot water after being accused of financial shady business. She was nabbed by federal authorities for allegedly laundering money and siphoning off around $150,000 from pandemic relief funds meant for her nonprofit organization. This all went down after Casa Ruby had hit rocky financial ground, leading to its closure in 2022. The accusations against Corrado are no joke. Prosecutors claim she diverted a hefty chunk of the $1.3 million in relief funds earmarked for Casa Ruby into her own offshore accounts. It's like Robin Hood in reverse, only instead of robbing from the rich to give to the poor, she allegedly swiped from the needy to enrich herself. So more like a Prince John, if you will. Ruby spent the stolen money on luxury items, such as high-end cars, designer clothing, and extravagant dinners at expensive restaurants. Like all of these people, right? Additionally, she used the funds to finance her personal business ventures and indulged in international travel, all while maintaining an extravagant lifestyle fueled by the stolen funds. But once she got word that the authorities were onto her, Ruby sold her home in Prince George's County and made a run for it to El Salvador. So, how did they catch her? Well, it seems Ruby made an unexpected return to the U.S. after skipping town when the financial irregularities were revealed. It's not really clear why she came back, but she did, and was promptly arrested at a hotel in Laurel, Maryland, which is a small suburban town between Baltimore and D.C. The FBI and the D.C. Office of the Inspector General were on her tail, and they weren't letting her slip away again. Now, Corrado is facing a laundry list of charges, including bank fraud, wire fraud, and failure to report foreign bank accounts. It sounds like she won't be living her best life anytime soon. As of this video, she's cooling her heels in federal custody until a detention hearing on Friday. Not exactly the sunny beach vacation she might have had in mind. The Casa Ruby saga has left many in the LGBTQ+ community feeling betrayed and disillusioned. Corrado named the relief fund Casa Ruby, but it looks like she was actually referring to her own Casa Ruby. And instead of helping people, it seems she was helping herself. And now, it looks like the new Casa Ruby will be the Casa Federal Facility, complete with all the amenities she deserves. Number 5. The Rock Doc. Jeffrey W. Young Jr., also known as the Rock Doc, got himself in some pretty serious trouble with a 20-year jail sentence for orchestrating a complex prescription medicine racket from his clinic in Tennessee. This nurse practitioner not only prescribed hefty doses of unnecessary medicine to his patients, but also allegedly engaged in adult favors, misuse of illegal substances, and even attempted to launch a reality TV show glamorizing his creepy antics. Despite not being a doctor, Young portrayed himself as a wild party practitioner, complete with motorcycle rides and nightclub rendezvous. His self-produced video showed off a lifestyle filled with drinking, smooching, and bragging about his clinic's adventurous atmosphere. Because when you have any sort of medical issue, you always go to the clinic that's known for being adventurous, right? Young attempted to boost his popularity through social media and his failed reality TV show, all while continuing to exploit his patients for financial gain and personal gratification. But behind the flashy facade, Young's actions were anything but harmless. An investigation revealed a pattern of misconduct dating back to 2015, such as prescribing medicine people clearly were using for recreational purposes. Sadly, but also unsurprisingly, officials failed to take decisive action despite receiving numerous complaints against him. After years of evading justice, Young Jr. was finally brought down by federal authorities who slammed him for misrepresenting himself. His 20-year sentence serves as a warning to others who exploit their positions of trust for selfish gain. As the dust settles on this sordid affair, one thing remains clear. The Rock Doc may have thought he was some sort of rock star, but in reality, he was just another wannabe weirdo dude. And yeah, the guy isn't an actual doctor, but he likely still would have reached the fame he was hoping for by just being a legitimate, authentic nurse and doing well at his job and putting it on YouTube. Why do people always want to portray themselves as something else? Number 4. She couldn't stop running. Annette Bond thought she could pull a fast one on the system, claiming she could barely walk while secretly pounding the pavement during 5K training runs. But her scam got a pretty severe running cramp when a fraud investigation team caught her red-handed. After nearly a decade of pocketing enhanced benefits due to supposed mobility issues from multiple sclerosis, Bond's jig was up. The jury wasted no time finding her guilty of swindling taxpayers out of nearly £70,000. Surveillance footage doesn't lie. Bond was caught on camera leaving her home in high-visibility running gear, breezing through 5,000-meter circuits up to 4 times a week. It's like she claimed she had mobility issues, but then put clothing on to make the fact that she could run really well even more noticeable. The Department for Work and Pensions Fraud investigators spilled the tea in court, revealing how Bond's confident runs contradicted her claims of vertigo and poor balance. Her mother even testified, admitting she spotted Bond jogging around the neighborhood on the regular. Apparently, she wasn't aware that her daughter didn't actually have MS. Now, Bond is facing the music as of the release of this video. The judge is considering whether a jail sentence might be on the cards for her deceitful antics. Guess those 5K runs won't be so invigorating behind bars. Let's hope she's ready to lace up for some court-mandated exercise instead. Number 3. The CIA agent next door. Dennis Schuler, a Texan with an elaborate ruse, swindled nearly $20 million from over 20 friends and associates, masquerading as a high-ranking CIA operative over several years. Schuler, who went by the name St. Jovite Youngblood, told tales of adventure and heroism, captivating his upscale Austin social circle. He created stories of his CIA exploits and a background in quantum physics, despite the fact that he was actually a used car salesman from Cleveland. Schuler's con targeted unsuspecting victims, including successful developer Eric Perardi, who thought Schuler was a part of Delta Force. Schuler convinced him there was an impending threat from a Mexican cartel targeting him and his family. Claiming to possess CIA clearances, Schuler coerced Perardi into handing over $821,600 under the guise of protection payments by telling him his ex-wife was working with narcos to get his life insurance. Schuler's web of lies extended to other victims, such as engineer Ricky and gym owner Rebecca Kumar, who relinquished $200,000 to him under false pretenses of resolving a blackmail case and securing their family heirlooms. As suspicions grew within his circle, Schuler's elaborate facade began to crumble. Perardi, driven to action after losing his home due to financial strain caused by Schuler's demands, collaborated with federal agents wearing a wire to incriminate Schuler during a lunch meeting. The subsequent raid on Schuler's home uncovered damning evidence, including a script instructing his wife on how to handle law enforcement inquiries. Schuler, who will be standing trial for his actions, wasted over $700,000 at Las Vegas casinos. For his victims, the experience was a mix of disbelief and disgust, realizing they had fallen prey to Schuler's deceitful manipulations. Despite the shame and financial loss, Perardi and others are determined to see justice served, underscoring the devastating impact of Schuler's brazen con. Number 2. The $8 million shell game. David Ostrov, the former finance director of a prestigious Long Island private school, found himself at the center of a shocking scandal when he was sentenced up to 25 years in prison for embezzling over $8 million from the school's coffers. Ostrov, 52, had spent a decade as the CFO of the Schechter School of Long Island, a prestigious private school, where he misused his position of trust to orchestrate an elaborate scheme that siphoned millions of dollars into his personal accounts through shell corporations. During his tenure, Ostrov lived a life of luxury, using the stolen money to finance a lavish lifestyle. He indulged in extravagant purchases, including acquiring 5 opulent beach houses in the desirable Ocean Beach area of Fire Island. These properties, worth millions collectively, provided Ostrov with not only a place to escape, but also lucrative rental income, further fueling his illicit activities. In addition to his real estate investments, Ostrov splurged on high-end vehicles, such as a classic 1965 Ford Mustang, along with a Lincoln Aviator's SUV and a Mercedes-Benz. His penchant for luxury extended beyond automobiles, as he also amassed collections of sports memorabilia, further enhancing his opulent lifestyle. Ostrov attempted to cover his tracks by using shell corporations to siphon millions from the school's coffers. He also set up a PayPal account in the school's name to hide the funds and deposited the stolen money into it. Additionally, he falsified expense reports at the school to illegally collect about $800,000. But despite his attempts to cover his tracks, a $35 million lawsuit filed against him by the school exposed the extent of his fraudulent activities. The lawsuit, combined with a thorough investigation by Suffolk County prosecutors, ultimately led to Ostrov's conviction on charges of first-degree grand larceny and money laundering. The case garnered widespread attention for the audacity of Ostrov's actions. As Ostrov begins his 25-year prison sentence, only the distant memory of his once opulent lifestyle will keep him warm at night, as well as his cellmate, Tinkerbell. Number 1. Taking advantage. Shante Daniels was arrested for robbing the corpse of retired detective Mark Leisure, who collapsed and passed away from a heart attack in his driveway. Daniels, being possibly the worst person ever, didn't waste any time when she saw Leisure unresponsive in his driveway. As soon as Mark hit the ground, Daniels rummaged through his pockets, snatching $10 for gas money and his Samsung smartphone. But she didn't stop there. She even made sure to help herself to his wallet, nabbing another $100. And if that wasn't bad enough, Daniels actually had the nerve to transfer $1,500 from Leisure's phone to her own bank account. Investigators were quick on the scene, responding to a 911 call about Leisure's collapse. Security footage revealed Daniels hanging around with Leisure just before his heart attack, having some sort of argument. She was seen on Leisure's security camera making calls and swiping stuff from him after he collapsed. When questioned, Daniels said she was in an argument with Leisure over $10 he supposedly owed her for gas, but things took a dark turn when Leisure's heart gave out. Daniels took her her opportunity and seized it, making off with whatever she could get her hands on. With Leisure's money, Daniels splurged on beauty treatments and expensive shoes, living it up while classy, right? Leisure's family and community were understandably outraged. He was a respected figure, known for his outspokenness and dedication to mentoring young people. As for Daniels, she's facing a pretty hefty list of charges, including aggravated burglary, theft, and identity theft. And with a $100,000 bond hanging over her head, she's got a lot of explaining to do in court. It makes you wonder, if Daniels hadn't been so worried about herself and getting money, could she have saved Mark Leisure's life? Instead, she valued shoes and a hairdo more. With people like her, why are we afraid of AI taking over again? It's not like they treat people any better than Skynet would. Who are some of the most despicable criminals around? Let's find out, starting with number 5, Brick Lady. Houston resident Rhoda Osman made $40,000 through a phony GoFundMe campaign after she lied about a man hitting her with a brick on the side of her head. Osman said that some guy threw a brick at her face after she refused to give him her number. Apparently, she was waiting for an Uber and approached the attacker thinking he was her driver. Osman also accused the suspect of being involved in human trafficking. Yeah, none of this really makes sense. According to one of her friends, she and Osman had gone bar hopping before the attack and had called their guy friends to come and get them. So the guy showed up in a dark-colored sedan, and Osman's friend sat in the front seat while Osman got into the back where another man sat. The friend said they didn't hear an argument before the incident, but said off the record that she didn't think anyone hit Osman with a brick. Osman's supposed attacker then jumped out of the car, got into another vehicle, and fled the scene. Although her friend begged her to call the police, Osman went live on Instagram to tell her followers what happened. Eventually, a detective contacted Osman to hear her version of the events. Osman said she and her friend went to a few different clubs, and she called an Uber at the end of the night. But Osman mistook the sedan for the Uber and got inside. Then she said the man hit her face with the brick. Osman also told the police that she did her own research and identified her attacker as a man called Oakland Douglas. But she later changed her story while talking to the detective on the phone and said the attack happened at a bar. When the detective asked more questions, she got frustrated and hung up. The police found security footage from nearby surveillance cameras and confirmed that Oakland Douglas was at the scene around the time of the incident. The video also caught Osman, Douglas, and her friend entering a club. 20 minutes later, the three walked to a white Maserati that was parked nearby. A fourth man joined them, and they all entered the vehicle. Osman and Douglas started arguing. He swung his hand while holding a plastic bottle and hit Osman's face. While the footage captured Osman getting hit in the face, it didn't support her version of events. A day after the incident, a GoFundMe campaign that listed Osman as the beneficiary went live. The description talked about how a man in Houston hit her with a brick because she wouldn't give him her number. After raising $42,000, donors reported the page was fraudulent and the platform took it down. The case went viral, and Osman posted a video on TikTok asking users to help her hold Houston police accountable. She explained in the video that she sent the police department more than 20 emails and did their job for them since she sent them a video of Douglas confessing to the attack. Osman said she felt unsafe in Houston and needed to find somewhere else to live. She was charged with theft by deception, and the district attorney sent her a bill at $50,000. Osman was already out on bail for previous charges. She agreed to surrender to police in January 2024, but never showed up. Doing things like this, lying about a crime, can have some pretty serious consequences for people such as Oakland Douglas, the guy she accused. Not only is she a terrible person for setting Douglas up, but then making a fraudulent GoFundMe to just get more money is very damaging and just makes it harder to believe victims. Number 4. Using kids. Ohio mother Pamela Reed pretended her daughter had cancer to trick people into donating thousands of dollars for her child's recovery. For years, Reed convinced friends and family that her 7-year-old daughter was suffering from multiple rare conditions, such as acute myeloid leukemia and seizures. She shared photos of her blind and sickly child on the internet and even shaved the child's hair so the lies would be more believable. Members of the community wanted to help the family and put together multiple fundraisers as well well as send Reed money to help her cope with the alleged expensive medical bills. But she couldn't keep up her lies forever. In January 2024, an elementary school nurse realized that the little girl could see perfectly, despite Reed saying her daughter had no vision in her right eye. By then, the 7-year-old had already missed over 280 school hours in the 2023-2024 school year. The concerned medical professional contacted the child's healthcare provider, who confirmed that the little girl had never had cancer or leukemia. Reed submitted stacks of paperwork related to her daughter's illness, but a doctor confirmed that every single form was fake. Eventually, the shamed mother admitted she falsified documents. She also repackaged prescriptions to give the appearance that they were cancer treatment medication and fed her daughter seizure medicine that she didn't need to take. The scheme began when the child was only 20 months old, when Reed claimed the little girl suffered from severe aplastic anemia, a disease where the bone marrow doesn't make enough blood cells for the body. Over the years, people threw many fundraisers for the family, which brought in thousands of dollars that Reed allegedly kept for herself. One organization donated roughly $8,000 to help with cancer treatments. The school reported Reed to the authorities, and she was arrested. Days before her arrest, she made a Facebook post claiming her child's health was deteriorating. She said they were in the middle of their biggest fight, and as a parent, nothing could have prepared her to handle such a heart-shattering situation. Reed said that her daughter was about to start 10 weeks of intense cancer treatment. It's hard to know if Reed's husband was involved in the plot. However, the couple's 2 children were removed from the home. Reed was charged with theft by deception, and her bond was set at $50,000. Number 3, like father, like daughter. A father and daughter stole roughly $75,000 from the UK supermarket chain they both worked at without either of them realizing what the other was doing. Christopher Partner worked as a McColl's convenience store manager, where he secretly stole $58,000. Then his daughter, Charlotte, was an assistant manager at another branch of McColl's, where she pocketed $16,000. Although the family members lived in the same house, Christopher had no idea what his daughter was doing until her employer discovered she was stealing from the company. And Charlotte's theft was what prompted an investigation into store operations, which was what uncovered her father's scam. They both ran the post office section in their respective stores. Charlotte ordered fewer stamps than she reported they were being delivered and kept the extra money for herself by a bank transfer or directly taking it out of the cash register. Christopher did the same thing, and on at least 54 occasions, he tried to pay back credit card bills as important stamp paperwork went missing. Charlotte's boss grew suspicious of her when her weekly balance sheet seemed off. And in fact, there was over $3,800 worth of stamps unaccounted for in the paperwork. When her employer confronted Charlotte about the discrepancy, she said someone must have taken the stamps to the new Milton store, another nearby McCall's location. She also said it was a mistake and was willing to pay back the funds using her own money. Her manager went to the new Milton store to see if the stamps were there, but couldn't find them. Charlotte handed in her resignation letter the next day and said the money was paid back. She later reported herself to the police. During her interview, she confessed to committing fraud over 6 months, starting in September of 2020. Charlotte claimed she was giving the money to a partner who was in debt in the worst way, hint, and never touched the cash herself. McCall's investigated its other staff members and uncovered Christopher's scam. During Christopher's time as a manager, paperwork just mysteriously went missing. The court found no evidence that the father and daughter worked together and treated their actions as separate cases. Charlotte's defense painted her as a vulnerable person who was being taken advantage of by her partner. Her father's defense told the court that he was in a lot of credit card debt and tapped into the company's funds to get his finances under control. The judge sentenced Charlotte to 9 months in prison, along with 180 hours of volunteer work and 15 days in rehab. The same judge handed Christopher a 15-month prison sentence. You gotta wonder what they were like when they were both arrested for the same thing. Number 2. Be right back. Long Island resident Steve Morrow jumped on the hood of a thief's car when the scammer attempted to drive away with his $8,000 Rolex. Morrow put his luxury watch up for sale on Facebook Marketplace and agreed to meet a potential buyer outside his home. After inspecting the Rolex, the buyer agreed to purchase it, and the two negotiated a price. Morrow's first mistake was letting the thief hold on to the watch as they walked to his car so he could get the money out of his vehicle. Once the two men reached the car, the scammer jumped in, locked his doors, and closed his windows. The thief then threw the car into reverse and stepped on the gas, knocking Morrow to the ground. But Morrow wasn't going to go down without a fight. So he jumped on the hood of the fraudster's car like he's Zoe Bell in Death Proof, hoping it would stop the thief from driving away. It didn't, and it was what most other people would feel was his second mistake. Morrow was eventually tossed from the vehicle while the driver got away with a free Rolex. Morrow sustained multiple cuts on his knees, elbows, and hands from the incident, but was lucky that the driver didn't do any serious damage. As the robber drove away, Morrow ran to some nearby police officers, which is super weird that there just happened to be some nearby cops that did nothing while this dude was getting thrown off the hood of a car, and screamed at them to catch the scammer, which they didn't. As of this video, the thief has not been caught. Please remember, it's not worth risking your life for a material item, especially one valued at $8,000. Number 1. The Master of Disguise. Tyler Adams, a longtime fugitive felon, committed multiple crimes using over a dozen aliases. The FBI dubbed Adams the Master of Disguise after spending 4 years on the run. Adams escaped state custody in Hawaii in 2019, where he was serving time for stealing $130,000 from Hawaiian banks and shoplifting a $5,000 ring from Costco. The Oahu Community Correctional Center reported him missing when he failed to return from a work furlough. Then, in September of 2020, a judge issued a $50,000 warrant for Adams' arrest. But there was no telling how low this man was willing to go, as he previously served time for using his mother's and father's identities to rack up more than $3 million in debt. But he went lower than just stealing money. During his time as a fugitive, Adams fell in love with a woman named Raquel Sabine, who thought his name was Paul Phillips. They had a daughter together, but in April of 2022, authorities found Sabine's body in Tijuana. Residents complained that there was a foul smell coming from Sabine's vehicle, and upon closer inspection, discovered Sabine's remains in the trunk. Mexican authorities questioned Adams about his girlfriend's disappearance, but he was uncooperative. Law enforcement later issued an Amber Alert for the couple's 7-month-old daughter, whom they later found safe in the care of a babysitter in Mexico. The day after his police questioning, Adams returned to the U.S. under the name Aaron Bain. Sabine's father, David Sabine, said that Adams seemed shady, and he noticed several red flags about his daughter's partner. He claimed that his daughter once confided in him that Adams was much nicer when other people were around, but when they were alone, things were very different. David was confident that Adams was the culprit and claimed that there was video surveillance footage showing Adams parking Sabine's car on the street where her body was found. In June of 2022, the FBI asked the public for help locating Adams, who was probably using an alias. Over the years, Adams went by numerous names, including Aaron Lee, David Smith, Dominic Braun, David Phillips, and many more. The FBI finally tracked him down in California and arrested him, ending their 4-year manhunt. He faced numerous charges, including grand theft, fraud, falsifying identification documents, and more. He pleaded guilty to misdemeanor grand theft and fraud charges. And as of this video, his case is ongoing. Who are a few of the most despicable criminals you wouldn't want to run into? Let's find out, starting with number 5, Lamar Whitehead. Again, we've been keeping tabs on Lamar Whitehead, the notorious Bling Bishop from Brooklyn, for a while now. It seemed inevitable as Thanos that his continuous shady dealings would eventually lead to his downfall. And now, it finally has. Whitehead, at 45 years old, was found guilty of a series of charges, including wire fraud, attempted extortion, and misleading the FBI. His conviction is the culmination of years spent lavishly with a lifestyle funded by people who trusted him. Whitehead's gluttonous appetite for luxury, evidenced by his array of designer suits, a fleet of high-end cars, and a $2.8 million mansion, was no secret. His pompous display of wealth even made headlines when he was robbed of $400,000 worth of jewelry during a sermon live stream, a scene that almost seemed too bizarre to be real. And that incident was just a peek into the bishop's extravagant lifestyle, which he funded through various scams, including exploiting an elderly single mother out of $90,000 by promising to buy her a house only to spend it on himself. Our coverage of the humble Mr. Whitehead has highlighted his unapologetic flaunting of wealth, often seen in Gucci and Fendi, driving luxury cars like Rolls Royces, Bentleys, and Maseratis, and living in a mansion that could be mistaken for a luxury hotel. His properties weren't just for show either. They included marble floors, a home gym, and even a personal movie theater. All bought with money meant for others' homes and their own future plans. Despite his claims of having influential connections, including those with New York Mayor Eric Adams, it was clear that Whitehead's empire was built on lies. His criminal activities extended to creating false bank statements to get loans and attempting to extort money under false pretenses, leveraging his supposed political ties for financial gain. The bishop's robbery incident, which really didn't get him much sympathy to begin with, seemed to be a result of his need to show off his wealth, attracting unwanted attention and danger. And you'd think that this would be a clear sign to stop showing off, right? Well, the only thing this bishop listens to is his pathetic need for attention, as evidenced by his prayer closet, a closet full of designer clothes and accessories which he flaunted online not long after he was robbed. Seriously, he called it a prayer closet? If that's not outright mocking all the people he's ripped off, we don't know what is. In following Whitehead's story, it's obvious that his actions were unsustainable. As he awaits sentencing, which is supposed to happen sometime in July of 2024, the tale of the Bling Bishop will hopefully come to a close, and the greedy man will be humbled. If God won't do it, the courts will. Number 4. Homeland fraud. Lana Brown, 82, and her husband Ed, 91, from Delaware, ran into a classic scam that hit like a plot twist no one saw coming. The duo was cheated out of an insane $1.46 million by fraudsters pretending to be from Homeland Security. The scammers had said that the couple was under surveillance and prohibited them from chatting with family, claiming their accounts were targeted by international cyber criminals from China, Russia, and Bolivia? Wait, is Bolivia a bad guy now? Simón Bolívar must be rolling in his grave. Anyway, the fraud began with a phone call to Lana from someone claiming to represent Wells Fargo, a bank she had trusted since 2005. She must have been ignoring all that stuff in 2016 when they got caught being shady, but that's a different story. Anyway, the fake Wells Fargo person told her that her and Ed's account was involved in various illegal activities, including money laundering. This call led Lana being connected with a supposed U.S. Marshal, complete with an official-looking ID and a LinkedIn profile that seemed legit, but turned out to be outdated by over a decade. The scammers then convinced the couple they were being placed in a witness protection program and that their money would be safer in a special Federal Reserve bank account created just for them. Lana, completely, and it sounds like reasonably, convinced of the Marshal's authenticity, followed every instruction, withdrawing her savings and investing in Bitcoin and gold, supposedly under the protection of the Federal Reserve. The scammers were so convincing that they even had Lana believe they were tracking her movements, further isolating her from seeking help. Despite repeated warnings from the actual Wells Fargo that she might be the victim of a scam, Lana, under the spell of the fraudsters, lied to bank employees, following the script given by her manipulators. Sadly, the realization of the scam hit her one night, leading to a painful awakening that their life savings were gone, tricked into sending it all through wire transfers, evidenced by multiple receipts. The aftermath left Lana and Ed relying on Social Security and Ed's small pension, as their savings were intended for Ed's possible future hospice care because of his declining health. The scam is part of a larger, distressing trend where seniors are often targeted, with the FBI estimating annual losses for senior citizens at around $3 billion to financial scams. One arrest has been made in connection to the Browns' case, thanks to their report to the National Elder Fraud Hotline and assistance from the real Homeland Security. However, the details remain scarce, and the couple hasn't sought a refund from Wells Fargo, acknowledging that the bank did attempt to intervene, which speaks to the refreshing character of Lana and Ed. But come on, guys, please do try to get your money back. This is a good time to remind everyone to please keep a close eye on your elderly loved ones. When these scams are revealed, it's almost always because someone close to them was paying attention. They watched out for you when you couldn't watch out for yourself, so it's time for you to do the same. Number 3. Newspaper terror. A gang of 4 robbers embarked on a daring robbery spree, going after newsstand vendors around some of New York City's iconic landmarks. This group, seemingly auditioning for the roles in the next Final Fight video game, managed to lift upwards of $15,000 from hard-working vendors in just 2 weeks. Their method? Ambush the vendors, typically older folks, by night, dragging them from their booths and threatening them unless they handed over the cash. The spree kicked off when they robbed elderly newsstand clerk Achier Roman of $750. It seems like the gang had a taste for drama, striking near places such as Carnegie Hall and the Ed Sullivan Theater. Their tactics were nothing short of ruthless. Victims were threatened with firearms and knives, with the crooks demanding everything from lottery ticket sales to cell phones. One vendor, Al Maruf, recounted his stand now shuts early at 8 p.m. after being hit, highlighting the lingering fear these incidents have instilled. Despite their efforts, each robbery ranged from a few $100 to their biggest heist being $5,000 in lottery receipts. So the problem wasn't as much about the money. Of course, losing money sucks, but it was more about their bold tactics in public spaces and the audacity to return to the scene of the crime as if taunting the police and their victims. Police, now on the hunt, have released surveillance images of the suspects, hoping someone might recognize these individuals who've decided that a life of crime is their calling. Newspaper vendors are already struggling as it is, and now these guys are making it worse? We know who can stop this crime wave and clean up the city. Number 2. House of Transformations. In Anchorage, Alaska, Rosalina Mavega and her husband Esau Fualema Jr. found themselves neck-deep in doo-doo for misusing $1.6 million in pandemic recovery funds. The money, meant to assist housing and treatment during the pandemic, ended up being used for buying crypto and funding a beauty salon. The duo faced charges including major fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. Despite their creative redirection of funds, the law caught up with them in yet another scandal that points out the shoddy oversight of pandemic relief efforts. The couple's charity, House of Transformations, a non-profit that was supposed to provide crucial services during the pandemic, received a healthy sum from the Anchorage Assembly in May of 2021, and Mavega was somehow running it despite her previous ban from serving as a Medicaid provider due to fraud allegations from an investigation that concluded in 2015. Her political ties seem to have played a role in the city's lackadaisical approach to vetting, as Mavega was a supporter of Anchorage Mayor Dave Bronson and had been appointed to several city commissions. Even as federal investigators started looking into Mavega and her empire of interlinked nonprofits and businesses, she maintained her positions on the Anchorage Equal Rights Commission and the City Housing and Homelessness Committee. The House of Transformations was one of the largest recipients of the city's American Rescue Plan Act funds. This money was intended for noble causes, but was instead funneled into the couple's personal accounts, used as collateral for loans, and invested in crypto. They also planned to use part of the funds to make down payments on properties purportedly for housing services, a promise left unfulfilled. As the scandal unfolded, it was revealed that Mavega's charity and business ventures were a convoluted web of entities, with some operating out of a midtown Anchorage office and engaging in a variety of services from beauty salons to vocational training. This complexity did little to hide their misdeeds from federal investigators who charged the couple in September of 2023. Mayor Bronson's office, already under fire for various other controversies, found itself embroiled in this debacle as well. Despite requests for Mavega to step down from her commission positions during the investigation, the mayor's office claimed it lacked the authority to remove her unilaterally. This stance, along with the sheer audacity of the fraud, fed into the belief that the city administration was clearly struggling with ethics and accountability, because there obviously was none. Why on earth they'd give this couple more money to commit fraud after they were already in trouble for fraud is mind-boggling. Number 1. Chasing the High Life. Abdul Ibrahim, 36, swindled over £340,000 from Alan Potter, an elderly man living on a pension. His grand scheme? Pretending he could recover the £1.8 million Potter lost in a previous scam. Ibrahim's con didn't start small. He initially convinced Potter to hand over £50,000, a number that eventually ballooned to over £340,000, with $200,000 in cold, hard cash. Potter was left teetering on the edge of bankruptcy, a situation so dire it threatened his home. Meanwhile, Ibrahim's lifestyle, funded by his ill-gotten wealth, was nothing short of excessive, featuring first-class trips to Greece and Ibiza, a £3 million mansion decked with the finest luxuries, including a £14,000 piano and a private members club membership. His mansion, by the way, was acquired under the guise of Ibrahim being a £500,000 a year hedge fund manager, and came complete with a £3,000 marble kitchen, an £800 bonsai tree, and a room just for his sneaker collection. Oh, and let's not forget the limited edition Banksy print, because what scammer's mansion is complete without an art print from a famous social commentator? We also note the irony of this guy being a Banksy fan, considering Banksy's opinion of him likely wouldn't be favorable. Ibrahim's capture was as dramatic as his lifestyle. Police raided his house, carting off the luxury goods that were bought with Potter's money. The downfall was a spectacle, juxtaposing the vast gap between Ibrahim's fraudulent facade and the grim reality of his actions. In court, Ibrahim talked about a past as a semi-professional soccer player, including a stint at Chelsea FC, perhaps in a bid to show that he wasn't just a career fraudster. However, the judge apparently felt Ibrahim was a career fraudster, regardless of what he did before, and handed down a 61-month sentence anyway. And while it might offer some closure to his victims, the sentence hardly seems harsh enough for the lavish life of deceit Ibrahim led at the expense of a man who'd already been scammed to the brink of collapse. Who are some of the most despicable criminals around? Let's find out, starting with number 6, the fake Nigerian billionaire. Dozie Mobwasi is the supposed billionaire fraudster who disappeared from his swanky London home. He vanished once he found out he was on the FBI's radar for allegedly pulling off a massive securities fraud scheme. As of the release of this video, Mobwasi's currently accused of making false claims about his companies, Tingo Mobile and Tingo Foods. He's raked in millions through illegal share sales and swiping a cool £16 million from publicly listed companies. Mobwasi, also known as Odogwu Banye Mobwasi, went on a spending spree fit for a king, scooping up Rolls Royces, hiring bodyguards, and even making a bid to buy Sheffield United Soccer Club. He also allegedly left a trail of unpaid rent across the UK. How else was he supposed to waste all of his money if it was going to rent though, right? And just when everyone thought that he was vanishing like Kaiser Soze, Mobwasi reportedly resurfaced in Nigeria, launching a food processing plant with claims of creating thousands of jobs. Which would be great if it were real, but it probably wasn't. U.S. prosecutors dropped the hammer on Mobwasi, accusing him of cooking the books and lying through his teeth about his company's financial health. They claim he pocketed millions through dodgy stock sales and fancy living, all while his businesses supposedly tanked. And let's not forget his lavish partying habits at posh hotels like the Dorchester, where he dropped a casual £800,000 in less than a year on parties and hotels. Despite all the heat on him, Mobwasi's standing firm, denying any wrongdoing and vowing to fight tooth and nail against the allegations. But with the FBI hot on his trail, it looks like his days of high-flying antics might be coming to a screeching halt if he's found guilty. Number 5. Overcharged clients. Former Merrill Lynch advisors Adam Kaplan and Daniel Kaplan got in trouble after allegedly swindling over $5 million from around 60 of their investment advisory clients. These twin brothers didn't just stop at overcharging fees. They allegedly went on full-on scam mode, fraudulently inflating advisory fees out their clients' knowledge. According to the SEC's complaint, the Kaplans didn't discriminate when it came to fleecing folks. They targeted family, friends, and even neighbors. Talk about blurring the lines between business and personal relationships, right? But wait, there's more. The brothers allegedly took things up a notch by dipping their hands into their clients' pockets, siphoning funds through bogus charges to credit cards and bank accounts. Then, they used that stolen cash for their own personal gain and to smooth things over with clients who smelled something fishy. For the grand finale, the Kaplans allegedly went full-on Ponzi scheme mode, falsifying documents and making shady payments to keep their house of cards from crashing down. It's like something out of a John Grisham thriller. That one's a reference for the boomers out there. Now, the SEC's got the brothers in their crosshairs, slapping them with charges for violating anti-fraud provisions. These guys both worked, briefly, for Merrill Lynch and Morgan Stanley, two reputable investment firms, so their victims understandably put their trust in them. It's still always good to pay attention to and be as involved as possible in anything dealing with your finances. Scammers are banking on the fact that you either don't know or you're not paying attention. Always double check everything. Number 4. An Orthodox scam. Yossi Engel defrauded over 24 Orthodox Jewish investors of a whopping $25 million in a scam that involved promises of installing security cameras and bogus property investments in Israel. Engel's fraudulent escapades came crashing down when FBI agents nabbed him at Los Angeles International Airport. Talk about a grand finale to his swindling spree. It seems Engel's web of lies was extensive. He lured investors into his company, Eyewitness Tech LLC, painting a picture of a thriving business installing security cameras. In reality, the company barely had any clients, and employees often twiddled their thumbs waiting for work while Engel caught some Z's on the couch. Engel's scamming ways extended to promising investments in Israeli properties that never existed. He even went as far as faking videos and documents to dupe his victims. Engel's schemes weren't just about making a quick buck either. They were about maintaining an illusion of trustworthiness within the Orthodox Jewish community, since Engel is an Orthodox Jew himself. He even set up a small synagogue next to his office, leveraging religious ties to bolster his fraudulent activities. The aftermath of Engel's deception left a trail of financial ruin and shattered relationships in its wake. His victims not only suffered financially, but also endured emotional distress. Engel's lavish spending spree with the stolen funds didn't go unnoticed. He splurged on a $2.5 million on currency exchanges, withdrew hundreds of thousands in cash, and even treated himself to a couple of private jet rides and casino visits. The scheme, spanning from December of 2018 to January of 2021, bought Engel a 6.5-year stint in federal prison and a hefty $11.7 million restitution bill. The judge was like, "No more private jets and casino trips for you, silly man." Number 3. An indigenous scam. Kumar Arun Nepali from Cary, North Carolina, pulled off a classic con job that landed him 44 months behind bars. What did he do? Well, he pleaded guilty to 17 counts of wire fraud, running a scheme that duped folks into handing over their hard-earned cash, stealing nearly $1 million. Nepali, leveraging his ties with the indigenous American community in Cary, spun tales of investing in a real estate venture in Orange County, North Carolina. He even sweetened the deal by dropping hints about insider info he supposedly had from his job in Chapel Hill. His pitch was smooth: invest now and reap the rewards later, which is usually how investments are supposed to work, so no surprise there. But here's the thing: Nepali wasn't exactly playing by the rules. Instead of putting the money where he said he would, he was shuffling it around to pay off earlier investors, creating a tangled web of deceit, Ponzi style. In a classic case case of affinity fraud that targets members of a specific group, Nepali preyed on the trust of his fellow indigenous community members, promising hefty returns while exploiting their faith in him. But as they say, the truth always comes out, and Nepali's house of cards came crashing down. Now he's facing the consequences of his actions with nearly 4 years behind bars and a hefty restitution bill of almost $1 million. The lesson here is to be wary of those promising quick riches, especially when they're pulling at the heartstrings of your own community. Number 2. The Care Stealer. Rachel Dawes, also known as Rachel Evans, landed herself in some serious trouble for a despicable act. She stole a whopping 30,000 pounds from Gary Stewart, a disabled man she was supposed to be taking care of. And this wasn't just a one-time slip-up either. It happened over 3.5 years. Instead of using the money for its intended purposes, Dawes went on a spending spree. She splurged on everything from Amazon Prime subscriptions to betting shop wagers, leaving poor Mr. Stewart with next to nothing in his bank account. Dawes' scheme started to unravel when she got suspended from her job for neglecting care records. Another carer, Wendy Beckett, discovered Mr. Stewart living in awful conditions with barely any food or electricity. The jig was up when irregular payments from Mr. Stewart's account raised red flags during an investigation. But here's the thing. Dawes didn't just dip into Mr. Stewart's account now and then. She did it regularly, systematically, for over 3 years. Her excuse? She claimed to be overwhelmed after her mother's passing, but the judge wasn't having it. In the end, Dawes was sentenced to 2 years and 6 months in prison and slapped with a restraining order to keep her away from Mr. Stewart. Justice was rightfully served, and Dawes left the courtroom in tears, but it's hard to feel bad for her. If she ends up bunking with Pennsatucky, maybe she'll get a taste of her own medicine. Number 1. The Sucker Punch. Barry R. Baker Jr., the guy infamous for sucker punching a disabled man outside a convenience store, ended up meeting his end in a motorcycle crash. The dude, already known for going after a guy with cerebral palsy and later getting into hot water for trying to sell firearms to a dealer, went out in a blaze of not-so-glorious glory when he collided with an SUV while fleeing from the cops. It all started back in 2017 when Baker, in his infinite wisdom, decided it was hilarious to mock a guy's walk outside a 7-Eleven at the wee hours of the morning. This poor guy had an unusual walk because he had cerebral palsy, mind you. So Baker's bright idea was to imitate his walk, and then, for the grand finale, he threw a cheap shot, nailing the man in the face. Thankfully, this classy move was caught on camera, and Baker got slapped with some well-deserved charges. But being the stand-up guy he was, Baker decided to do a disappearing act after posting bail. You'd think he'd learn his lesson, but nah, he just couldn't resist getting into more trouble. Fast forward to his escapades with firearms and the delightful hobby of trying to sell them to the wrong people. Add to that some minor traffic violations and a cozy involvement with a group running a contraband operation. Maybe some broth and a potato, and you've got a stew going. A stew made out of crime. But wait, there's more. Not content with his own misadventures, Baker's family decided to join the fun. Papa Baker, Barry Sr., got himself arrested in a contraband bust while his fiancée played hide and seek with the authorities, trying to help Barry Jr. evade capture. Barry Jr. was caught when he and his dad's fiancée made a pit stop at a convenience store in a small town. While they were there, a cashier recognized Barry Jr. from the news and tipped off the authorities. Soon after, the police swooped in and arrested them both without any drama. It seems like their attempt to lay low didn't quite work out as planned. Unfortunately for Baker, he was involved in a high-speed chase with the cops and meeting his end in a motorcycle crash. In the end, Baker's life turned out to be one big cautionary tale. Who are a few of the most despicable criminals around? Let's get right to it, starting with number 5, the Georgian Lawmaker. Felicia Franklin, a former Georgia lawmaker, faced a major setback when her night out at a sports bar turned into a public spectacle, leading to her removal from her vice chair position on the Board of Commissioners. Caught on camera in a drunken stupor, Franklin's claim of having her cocktail spiked with an unknown substance clashed with the evidence uncovered by the police. The saga began when Franklin, also eyeing the county chairman position, got in some trouble after an altercation outside the 404 Sports Bar and Grill in Morrow, Georgia. Supposedly incapacitated by illegal substances, Franklin's version of events painted a picture of vulnerability and foul play. However, Sergeant Scott Stewart from the Morrow Police Department contradicted her claims, explaining that there was no evidence to support her claim of having something slipped into her drink without her knowledge. Security footage showed Franklin entering the bar alone and indulging in multiple drinks, including cocktails with high alcohol content. By the time police arrived, she was sprawled on the ground, unconscious. Despite her disoriented state, Franklin managed to shout at the medics and officers attending to her, even striking an EMT while she was in the ambulance. As the dust settled, further investigations revealed discrepancies in Franklin's account. Receipts and video evidence contradicted her claims of only consuming a few drinks, exposing a night of heavy drinking. Moreover, a toxicology report detected compounds from that, let's just call it sticky icky in her system. Amidst the fallout, Franklin faced the consequences of her actions. The Clayton County Board of Commissioners, citing behavior unbecoming of her position, unanimously voted to remove her as vice chair. Despite her protests and claims of political sabotage, the decision remained unaltered, leaving Franklin's political future uncertain. Franklin attempted to salvage her reputation and political ambitions through social media, but her efforts were futile. The controversy surrounding her behavior outside the sports bar had tarnished her image irreparably. With the case closed by the police and no charges pressed by the EMTs, Franklin was left to pick up the pieces and contemplate her next steps in the aftermath of the incident. And seriously, the last thing we all need is yet another hypocrite telling us about rules that don't apply to them. No thank you and good day. Number 4. The Pink-Haired Mugger. A 24-year-old unnamed woman from New York found herself pinned against an apartment building by a female mugger in broad daylight. The mugger had pink hair, and she had a male accomplice as well, who helped to restrain the poor lady. In a desperate attempt to escape, the victim sought refuge in a nearby building, but the assailants persisted, attempting to grab her belongings, including her phone. Thankfully, an unnamed doorman witnessed the mugging and intervened, preventing further harm to the woman. Despite his efforts, one of the muggers falsely accused the victim of theft, momentarily distracting the doorman, allowing the perpetrators to snatch the victim's phone before fleeing the scene. Surveillance footage captured the assailants, providing clear descriptions to the NYPD. The female suspect was described as having pink hair, wearing a black bubble jacket and a gray jogging suit with white sneakers, and sporting a fanny pack or purse around her waist. Her male accomplice was described as having a medium build and a mustache, wearing a two-tone hoodie and blue jeans. The incident is just another on a long list as an example of the persistent challenge of robbery in New York City, which saw a 5.4% increase in January of 2024 compared to the previous year. Despite declines in other types of crimes, the city continues to grapple with the issue of robbery. It would seem that wearing something as attention-getting as a bright pink wig wouldn't be the smartest thing to wear when someone's out doing a crime. Number 3. The worst gas station. Texas attorney Maxie Schur is offering a hefty $10,000 reward after her son got caught up in an Oakland gas station ordeal. He was ambushed by a gang of armed robbers while gassing up his car near Oakland International Airport. Schur's son, fresh from celebrating his 21st birthday in Sonoma and Napa, places known for their wines, 21-year-olds are going to wineries to celebrate these days? Well, anyway, he and his friends made a pit stop at a 76 gas station around 2 p.m. Little did they know, trouble was a-brewing. According to Schur, it's become all too common for incidents like these to go down, especially with rental vehicles, earning Oakland a not-so-flattering reputation, as if it didn't already have one. Criminals in the area operate in organized crews, targeting airport-bound or returning travelers with ruthless efficiency. The gas station where the incident unfolded isn't the only hotspot. Nearby spots, such as a Shell station and an In-N-Out Burger parking lot, also see their fair share of crime. And it's not just petty theft we're talking about either. These crooks operate with a purpose, targeting rental cars and smashing windows or popping trunks to snatch valuables and luggage in the blink of an eye. The 50% increase in car-related crimes occurring in less than a year hasn't gone unnoticed, with the Shell gas station earning the dubious title of America's most dangerous gas station. Online reviews paint a dark picture as well, with tales of bold thefts in broad daylight and warning to avoid these places. Despite increased police patrols, the situation doesn't seem to be improving, with car thefts skyrocketing and repeat offenders slipping through the cracks. Oakland's mayor, Sheng Tao, also refuses to take any blame, pointing to rising crime trends that began before her tenure. Officers on the ground feel like the solution is pretty straightforward. Ditch the failed social experiments that are ruining Northern California and focus on strategies that actually work. Do you live in the Bay Area? How are things going? Number 2. Faking dementia. Ethel McGill, dubbed Britain's worst benefits cheat, managed to scam £750,000 by hiding her father's passing and feigning dementia. Sentenced to 5 years and 8 months in July of 2019, she was also slapped with an extra 8 months for failing to pay back £200,500 of her ill-gotten gains. The amateur actress from Cheshire concealed her father's passing for 12 years to claim his war pension and benefits. She even went as far as having a friend pretend to be him under a blanket at her home. Her deceptive act spanned over 2 decades, with McGill also pretending to have dementia and mobility issues. Even after she was caught on film moving without assistance and driving despite claiming to need a wheelchair, McGill's theatrics continued during her court appearance. She showed up in a wheelchair with incontinence pads to hide her face from photographers. It was very dignified. In court, McGill admitted to her fraudulent activities, which the Crown Prosecution Service described as one of the largest cases of benefit fraud by a single person. Despite her defense's claims of a modest lifestyle, McGill's deceitful schemes raked in far more than the average person's income. The judge lambasted McGill for sullying her father's name and criticized the authorities for failing to detect the fraud. McGill's 6-year and 6-month sentence included an additional term for not paying the confiscation order. In a letter to the prisoner's newspaper, McGill boasted about her great prison experience, claiming it felt like living in a little village. She painted a rosy picture of life behind bars, with the amenities and care provided despite her criminal activities, which is not what you want to hear from someone incarcerated. We're not vengeful, but if that's her attitude, then she's a little too comfortable, right? It's like when a kid is in trouble and gets spanked and in an act of defiance pretends like it doesn't hurt or laughs. We did that once. It didn't go well for us. Number 1. Squatters' rights. In New York City, Susanna and Joseph Landa's dream of retiring in a $2 million home with their disabled son has turned into a nightmare as they battle squatter Brett Flores, who claims he had a deal with the previous owner. The Landas bought the Queens property but couldn't move in yet, thanks to Flores. Flores worked as a caretaker for the previous owner until his passing, roughly 7 months before the Landas bought the house. Now he insists he has a license to stay put. Despite giving him a 10-day notice to vacate, the Landas couldn't get him out. Under New York squatters' rights, it's illegal to evict an occupant who's lawfully stayed for over 30 days, complicating matters further. Even though Flores isn't a tenant and has no lease, the police couldn't remove him because somehow that was deemed lawful, we guess. Seriously, squatters' rights make no sense. And to make things worse, Flores had been subletting rooms in the property. He has listed the Prince Room for $50 a night online, raking in cash while the Landas foot the bills, including hefty heating costs due to open windows, which also doesn't make sense. If Flores said he was supposed to be there, shouldn't he be paying the heating costs? The couple's attempts to resolve the issue through civil court have been stymied by Flores' tactics, including showing up without an attorney and filing for bankruptcy, which grants him temporary refuge under New York City law. Joseph Landa expressed frustration with the legal system, feeling forgotten and powerless. Despite their efforts, the Landas must wait until April for a landlord-tenant court hearing in hopes of finally evicting Flores and reclaiming their home. Squatters suck, and squatters taking advantage of loopholes suck even more. Like most laws, the idea of squatters' rights came from good intentions. One of the main reasons they exist is to discourage people from buying property and then abandoning it or just letting it go to ruin. Another reason is to prevent some random person with a deed dated from, say, 200 years ago showing up and saying the property is theirs. The current resident and supposed homeowner who has lived there for over 20 years wouldn't be just thrown out because of squatters' rights. It gives them a chance to settle the dispute. Of course, the actual laws are more nuanced, but that's the meat and potatoes of it. With all the loopholes in NYC, though, it seems like people can just break into a place and claim it in a short period of time. Who are a few of the most despicable criminals around? Let's find out. Starting with number 6, never existed. Suzanne Hardman was lonely and vulnerable after a recent divorce, so she turned to Match.com in search of companionship. But she didn't know that the path she was on looking for love was a path that would lead to deception and financial ruin. Enter James Richards, a charming and seemingly genuine man who captured Suzanne's heart with his flattering messages and promises of love. Despite the over-the-top declarations of affection, Suzanne, like many others in her position, found herself drawn in by James's apparent sincerity. She was flattered by his attention and believed she had finally found someone who really cared for her. However, what Suzanne didn't realize was that James was nothing more than a fictional character created by a group of Nigerian scammers. Operating from a house in Hampshire in the UK and using Match.com as a front, these scammers took advantage of vulnerable women like Suzanne, exploiting their desire for love for financial gain. As Suzanne's relationship with James blossomed, so too did his requests for money. Claiming various emergencies and financial hardships, because these guys always have some sort of hardship, James convinced Suzanne to transfer loads of money to him and his supposed lawyer, Rod Thompson. In just 1 month, Suzanne handed over a staggering £174,000 of her life savings, completely unaware that she was being duped. The elaborate scam unraveled when Suzanne confided in a colleague who urged her to verify the legitimacy of the transactions. When Suzanne realized it was all a scam, her world came crashing down. Thankfully, justice was served when the perpetrators of the scam were brought to trial and convicted of fraud and money laundering. But the damage had been done. Suzanne was left devastated, not only by the loss of her life savings, but also by the betrayal of trust and the emotional toll of being deceived. Suzanne remains determined to move forward and rebuild her life after the devastating ordeal. Armed with newfound knowledge and a healthy dose of skepticism, she continues to navigate the world of online dating with caution, determined not to fall victim to deception again. If you follow this channel, you know that scams like this are rampant. We report on them all the time. So it's a good time to remember that you need to check on your single, older loved ones who may not be as aware of these scams. It's almost always someone close to the victim that ends up blowing the whole thing wide open. Number 5. Bittersweet. A Colombian social media influencer, Milton Dominguez, known as J. Tommy, faced backlash and potential criminal charges after posting a tasteless prank video online. In the video, Dominguez can be seen tricking elderly and homeless men into eating bars of soap covered in chocolate, presenting them as chocolate ice cream bars. The prank, which took place on the streets of Cartagena, Colombia, pretty much outraged everyone who saw it. The video shows Dominguez buying soap bars and melting chocolate to cover them with. He then approaches unsuspecting individuals, presenting the soap as a delicious treat. The victims, unaware of the trick, take several bites before realizing they've been tricked into eating soap. Their reactions range from confusion to anger as they discover the truth. One of the guys who participated in the prank turned himself in to the authorities and was fined $324 for his involvement. Dominguez, meanwhile, faced public backlash and criticism for his actions. Many condemned the prank as cruel and insensitive, particularly given the vulnerability of the victims targeted. And in response to the backlash, Dominguez issued a public apology on his Instagram account, expressing regret for his actions and acknowledging the harm caused. He admitted that the prank had crossed the line and urged other influencers to reflect on the impact of their content. The incident sparked a broader conversation about the ethical responsibilities of social media influencers and the potential consequences of their actions. Many called for greater accountability and scrutiny of online content, particularly when it involves vulnerable or marginalized communities. Authorities in Cartagena indicated that Dominguez and his accomplices could face criminal charges for their involvement in the prank. The prank, as far as these pranks go, is pretty harmless, but extremely mean-spirited. Pranks are only fun when everyone is laughing in the end. Number 4. Heroes to zeros. In New York City, the housing authority, known as NYCHA, was caught up in a bribery scandal that involved 70 current and former employees. The scheme, a classic pay-for-play corruption, saw housing authority workers pocketing a staggering $2 million in bribes over a decade to secure lucrative work contracts for themselves and others. Among those charged were individuals who were once hailed as heroes within the NYCHA community. Dwarka Rupnarain, a former superintendent, stood out for allegedly collecting over $80,000 in bribes while overseeing Bronx housing projects. His social media profiles show off a life of luxury, with pictures of his extravagant vacations and a taste for high-end European cars. Rigoberto Cherries, another implicated individual, was selected to participate in NYCHA's Coaching and Mentorship Leadership Academy, designed to enhance leadership skills. Despite this recognition, Cherries is accused of pocketing at least $70,000 in bribes from contracts across Brooklyn and Queens. Naimia Branch, lauded as a hero by NYCHA Administrator Eva Trimble 2020, also faced charges. Despite being praised for his dedication to his job, Branch allegedly accepted bribes totaling around $3,000 while working as a superintendent in Brooklyn. Similarly, Alex Tolazano, a Bronx superintendent, allegedly received over $41,000 in bribes. Tolazano's reputation at NYCHA was tarnished in 2022 when he was suspended for appearing undressed in bed with a woman during a work-related video conference call. Which, it's weird that he wasn't just outright fired, right? Elizabeth Tapia, another implicated superintendent, faced accusations of accepting $11,000 in bribes and took advantage of her position by favoring her domestic partner in work assignments. Another employee, Henry McFadder, was suspended for charging a subordinate to review a resume using his work computer, which is a big fat who cares sandwich. But then he is also alleged to have taken $15,000 in bribes. Meanwhile, Juan Mercado, who raked in a whopping $314,300 in bribes, was employed as a superintendent across multiple NYCHA projects. The crazy thing about this story isn't that these people were taking bribes, but that the charges brought by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York were the largest number of federal bribery indictments in a single day in Department of Justice history. You'd think it'd be like some mafia guys or something, but no, it's this insanely corrupt housing authority. Number 3. Blame it on takeout. Amanda Farr, a woman from the UK, was sentenced to 18 months in prison for committing fraud by stealing £24,000 from her poor 91-year-old grandmother, Joyce Hutchings. Farr set up a scam to divert her grandmother's savings into her own account over 2 years. She made a total of 130 transactions, splurging the money on fast food from Just Eat and McDonald's, purchases from iTunes and the PlayStation Store, bets on an online sportsbook, and even funding a vacation to Amsterdam. Her grandmother, on the other hand, was left in a horrible financial situation, owing money to utility companies and debt collection agencies. During her trial at Canterbury Crown Court, Farr attempted to deflect blame by accusing her grandmother of being a big spender, particularly on Asian food. Because, you know how much you spend at Panda Express, so it makes sense that Hutchings' money was all gone. Panda Express is pretty pricey. Anyway, Farr also claimed that she had a legit financial arrangement that was aimed at benefiting the entire family. However, jurors saw through her lies and unanimously convicted her of fraud. Confiscation proceedings at the same court determined that Farr's actual financial benefit from the scam amounted to £13,900, while her available assets were a mere £84. As a result, the judge ordered her to repay the paltry sum within 28 days, warning that failure to comply would result in an additional 7 days of imprisonment. Farr's callous exploitation of her vulnerable grandmother was characterized as calculated and devoid of empathy. Despite the limited confiscation order, the court made it clear that offenders could still be pursued for further funds if they were found to possess additional assets in the future. And yes, we know that indulging in Asian food probably doesn't mean take out Chinese, but still, she's going to say her grandmother's financial problems were from too many dinners, and she really thought that excuse would fly? Number 2. The Medi Scam. Erin Foley and her twin brother, Ted Albin, allegedly swindled $25 million in Medicare funds. The duo orchestrated the scheme through their healthcare billing company, Grapevine Professional Services, Inc., over a 4-year period until 2021. The indictment reveals that Foley and Albin utilized several companies under their control to obtain prescriptions for the equipment. These orders were then billed to the government, resulting in payments totaling $9 million from various government agencies and private insurers. What made this case particularly crazy was Erin Foley's connection to law enforcement as the wife of Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office Captain Randy Foley. Erin's arrest sent shockwaves through the community. Captain Foley, a highly respected figure in the sheriff's office, appeared in federal court on behalf of his wife during a bond hearing. The couple, who married in Las Vegas in 2003, also ran a consulting company together called Liberty Bell Consulting, Inc. The indictment suggests that they not only billed for medically unnecessary equipment, but also acted as brokers for the equipment, soliciting and receiving cash kickbacks in the process. If convicted on all charges, Foley and Albin could face a maximum sentence of 50 years behind bars for offenses including healthcare fraud, wire fraud, and violation of anti-kickback laws. The implications of this case extend beyond the individuals involved. Medicare, a taxpayer-funded program designed to provide affordable healthcare to retirees and disabled individuals, has been exploited for personal gain. In Palm Beach County, where Captain Foley serves as head of the Behavioral Services Division, the arrest has raised questions about his knowledge of his wife's activities. While the sheriff's office maintained that Captain Foley wasn't implicated in the allegations, the situation has cast a shadow over his reputation. And the twins had control of a bunch of different companies, but still needed to scam? Sure, they got guaranteed to be these hugely successful companies or anything, but with the number of businesses they had and her husband's probably good salary, this seems like a really unnecessary risk. Do you think Captain Foley knew, or was he in the dark? Number 1. No, I slang that. David Levy orchestrated a scam that saw him and his cohorts pocketing a jaw-dropping £500,000 in charity donations over a decade. The elaborate scam involved setting up fake collections at supermarkets across England and Scotland, using the logos and marketing materials of well-known charities like Children in Need and Mind. Levi's criminal group exploited people's goodwill, falsely promising that the proceeds would benefit these good causes. However, only a fraction of the funds ever reached the intended organizations, with the bulk of the money going into Levi's pockets. What makes this story even crazier is Levi's excuse when confronted by the authorities. In a recording played in court, Levi, when questioned about the stolen money, said he was working in the same field as Deuce Bigalow, male gigolo. In an audio clip, Levi's casual admission of working as a man of the night, a nightman if you will, left investigators amused. His attempt to attribute his income to this type of work raised eyebrows, especially given Levi's appearance. Moreover, it's amazing to learn that Levi's purported line of work as a nightman was actually legal in the UK. The fact that people can make money like that without legal repercussions actually makes his excuse plausible. But as the investigation unfolded, Levi's elaborate story began to unravel. Lancashire police launched an investigation after getting a tip from the BBC's Children in Charity. This ultimately led to Levy's arrest as well as the arrest of his accomplices. Raiding Levy's home and business brought in a ton of evidence, including phones, tablets, and charity items, ultimately sealing the fate of Levy and his associates. The sentencing at Preston Crown Court marked the culmination of the legal saga, with Levy and his co-conspirators conspirators facing the consequences of their actions. Levy was sent to prison for 5 years for his role in the scam. It's pretty low to pretend to be a children's charity, so while Levy's excuse is kind of funny, his crime wasn't. And let's not forget, it's pretty dumb to try and pull off such a far-fetched excuse, especially this guy. But now that he's doing some time, he'll be irresistible, as the ladies will see him as a dangerous bad boy type. Who are some of the people who seem to love doing crime? Let's find out, starting with number 6, the scamming couple. Bikini model Patricia Perez Gonzalez and her boyfriend Alberto Campagnoni faced allegations of identity theft, grand larceny, and fraud after they were caught running a $2 million identity theft ring back in 2016. They were accused of stealing the personal information of a bunch of elderly people. Their scam involved opening up 40 American Express Platinum cards in the names of their victims, having them mailed to vacant properties, and then spending as much as they could. For a little over a year, the couple went bananas, charging up to $2 million in fraudulent transactions. Their lavish purchases included luxury vacations to New York, Los Angeles, and Hawaii, fine dining at expensive restaurants, and shopping sprees at renowned designer stores like Hermes, Burberry, Louis Vuitton, and Chanel. The couple, who looked rather unassuming in their beige-colored prison garb, sat emotionless during their court proceedings. They were being held on $500,000 bail and pleaded not guilty. However, despite the amount of damage she caused, Patricia Perez Gonzalez received a pretty light sentence. As part of a plea deal, she copped to 1 count of 4th-degree grand larceny and managed to avoid any jail time. The dental hygiene student, known for flaunting her extravagant lifestyle on social media, left Manhattan Supreme Court with a smile on her face. Her defense lawyer, probably noticing how bad that looks, tried to point out her positive transformation, emphasizing her commitment to being a full-time college student achieving high grades. Alberto Campagnoni, who took a deal too, didn't do as well. He pleaded guilty to grand larceny and identity theft and was sentenced to serve 2 to 6 years in prison. So what do you think? Was it fair that Alberto got sentenced like he did while his girl was basically told that what she did wasn't nice and she needed to stop? Tell us in the comments below. Number 5, the real estate guru. Mickey Lynn Fox, a Houston-based social media influencer, was sentenced to 5 years in prison for orchestrating a real estate scam that targeted unsuspecting investors. The 41-year-old, known on YouTube as Michaela Pink and later as Summer Black, she must like some kind of color theme for her name, pleaded guilty to aggregate theft after swindling 8 individuals out of a total of $136,000 over nearly 5 years. Fox used her online platform to build trust with her followers before exploiting them in bogus real estate deals. People from Texas, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and California fell victim to her scam, with some even being parents of children who played baseball with her kids. The influencer, who presented herself as a lifestyle and dating consultant, attracted victims through her dating advice videos. Fox had convinced people to invest $35,000, supposedly to help her purchase a house for flipping. She promised quick property sales and assured the investors they would get a return of their principal investment along with a share of the profits. One victim, who chose to remain anonymous, said that he decided to invest due to a mutual friend who was supposedly already receiving returns on their investment. But as time passed, the investors started to get suspicious when Fox failed to provide updates. When they asked about their money or the returns, she dodged the questions with excuses. The Harris County District Attorney's Office, upon investigating the case, discovered that Fox had spent the money on everyday expenses such as rent, childcare, school expenses, and personal items, leaving her victims without recourse for reimbursement. Sheila Hansel, the Assistant District Attorney in the Consumer Fraud Division, talked about the elaborate persona Fox had crafted online, describing her as very charming and showing how easy it was for her to run her scam. Catherine O'Connor, a forensic investigator, also detailed the range of expenditures that depleted the scammed funds. As Mickey Lynn Fox began her 5-year prison sentence, her victims were left with a mix of emotions. On one hand, they're glad justice was served, But on the other hand, they're still out the money she stole. It's dirty that she was scamming people she knew that were friends with her kids, but it does make it a little better that she was using the money mainly to pay bills. Like, it's terrible what she did, but at least she wasn't out just dumping money on Birkin bags or something. And since she's in prison, maybe she'll change her name to Mickey Orange. Number 4, the Special Forces Officer. Former British Special Forces serviceman David Apps left his elderly mother, Ann Bates, in financial ruin after a drunken gambling spree that drained nearly £12,000 from her funds. Apps went on a 24-hour betting binge using his mother's credit card on SpreadX, a UK-based sports betting site. The incident unfolded during Apps's one-day stay at his mother's house. Under the influence of alcohol, he registered his mother's card on the betting platform, making 31 transactions totaling £11,900. The consequences of Apps's actions were severe, forcing his elderly mother to sell her home and relocate to Australia to live with her daughter. Apps, currently serving as a director of special projects at the United Arab Emirates government, faced sentencing where the judge expressed bewilderment over Apps's decision to steal from his mother given his income. Apps, acknowledging the impact of drinking on his actions, pleaded guilty to fraud by representation. His mother, distressed by the revelation of the gambling spree, sold her apartment and moved, citing financial vulnerability and an inability to cover her bills. During the court proceedings, Ann Bates said that she still loves her son, but was devastated by his actions, saying that she never gave him permission to take the money. She also talked about her financial struggles, saying that it made her unable to pay her bills and forced her to put her apartment up for sale and move to Australia. Apps's lawyer blamed the maxing out of his mother's credit cards on a gambling addiction. She pointed to Apps's genuine remorse and willingness to provide for his mother while acknowledging the burden he dumped on her. The judge deferred the final sentencing, but forced Apps to pay $1,500 per month directly to Ann Bates and also wanted him to prove repayment of the defrauded sums. Additionally, Apps was instructed to pay a significant amount to compensate for the psychological trauma inflicted upon his mother and to provide evidence of continued counseling. And he also was sent to bed with no dessert. You only get dessert when you don't steal from your mom, David. Number 3, the priest. Father George Athanasiou, an assistant priest at All Saints Greek Orthodox Church in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, was at the center of a scandal involving the theft of over $117,000 in parish funds. The priest was hit with 223 felony charges, including theft by unlawful taking, forgery, bad checks, and access device usage. We don't know what access device usage is, but Athanasiou did it, and he is in trouble for it. Athanasiou's criminal activities went on for almost a year, with the priest accused of embezzling funds from the church's bank account. The whole thing came to light when the church leadership discovered missing checks that had been deposited into an unauthorized PNC bank account. The investigation pointed directly at Athanasiou, who was the only person with a PNC ATM card during the time in question. Apparently, Father Dowling was on the case. Extra credit for all 5 of you who got that reference. Athanasiou confessed to stealing the money due to personal hardships, and he acknowledged the criminal nature of his actions, saying it was a blatant disregard of the trust placed in him as a church member. The consequences were swift for Athanasiou, who was immediately suspended without pay pending further investigation. Wait, priests get paid? We always thought they just kinda lived at the church or something. Well, anyway, the Greek Orthodox metropolis of Pittsburgh, in a letter to the church, expressed deep distress over the situation, urging prayers for all that were affected. Apparently, Athanasiou had a gambling addiction, and that was a contributing factor to the embezzlement. Athanasiou's attorney, Patrick Thomasy, acknowledged his client's gambling problem, noting that it was referenced in the statement given to the police. While details about where the priest was gambling or the nature of his betting isn't known, Thomasy said that Athanasiou planned to repay the church. The attorney said that a significant amount of money was already set aside for restitution and that the priest was committed to repaying every cent. The scandal hasn't only tarnished Athanasiou's reputation, but has also triggered legal actions. The Pennsylvania Attorney General's office has taken over the criminal case due to a potential conflict of interest involving lawyers at the Washington County District Attorney's Office who are members of the All Saints Church. Doesn't he kind of look like Nathan from South Park? Number 2, the minister. Reverend Ivan Warwick played a pivotal role in scamming 3 elderly brothers out of £1.1 million. Warwick, along with an accomplice, befriended the vulnerable siblings before conning them in a scheme that resulted in the loss of their family farm and savings. The McCullough brothers, Hugh, Roddy, and David, fell victim to Warwick and his partner Douglas Stewart, who manipulated them into granting power of attorney back in 2013. Exploiting the brothers' trust, the fraudsters convinced them to sign away their home and land for free. Unsurprisingly, the siblings, aged 84, 82, and 79 at the time, were all suffering from dementia. Despite the brothers seeking justice by reporting the incident to the police, law enforcement deemed it a civil matter, concluding that no crime had occurred. Warwick and Stewart then proceeded to evict the brothers from their farm and then sold the property, because why wouldn't they do something like that? A civil court case initiated by the middle brother Roddy led to a judgment in October 2022. The ruling said that the brothers didn't comprehend the document relinquishing their farm and accused Warwick and Stewart of taking advantage of them through fraud or circumvention. So Warwick and Stewart were ordered to repay the ill-gotten gains, with Warwick owing £66,000 and Stewart facing a larger sum of £691,000. Warwick, however, offered a small monthly repayment of £50, sparking outrage from the victim's cousin, Hugh Fraser, who called the proposal ludicrous, and since it would take a century to repay the full amount. As the legal proceedings unfold, Stewart was headed for a bankruptcy hearing as of the release of this video. Meanwhile, Warwick, who once preached to Prince Charles, faces internal disciplinary proceedings within the Church of Scotland. The sad thing is that these guys clearly needed help, and if no family was immediately available, you'd think that their Reverend, of all people, would be trustworthy. And the cojones on Warwick to basically offer to repay nothing. You can't help but think he was hoping to wait out some lifespans, which is shameful. Number 1. The husband. Stuart Williamson orchestrated an elaborate scheme to convince the family of his late partner, Diane Douglas, that she was alive for 3 years following her untimely passing at his hands. The disturbing situation blew up when family members grew suspicious and contacted the police, triggering a missing person investigation. Williamson, who portrayed himself as happily retired on social media, posted pictures of himself enjoying life, playing cricket and vacationing in tropical paradises. Unbeknownst to Douglas's family, this facade concealed a gruesome reality. In December of 2018, Williamson tragically ended Douglas's life, later burying her in their garden. The extent of the deception only became clear when the family discovered that Williamson hadn't only concealed Douglas's passing, but had also been siphoning her pension and disability benefits for 3 years. During this time, he manipulated her family members into believing that Douglas was alive by sending text messages from her mobile phone and arranging meetings and events, only to cancel them at the last minute. Williamson's actions went beyond financial exploitation. He played the role of a caring partner on the surface, while in reality, he used and exploited Douglas, who was diagnosed with Huntington's disease in 2007. Despite the relationship breaking down and a split in 2011, Douglas, facing significant mental impairment by 2016, found herself living with Williamson again. More disturbing details emerged when it was revealed that Williamson, a former NHS manager, was described by colleagues as a sociopath and a narcissistic demeanor in a history of predatory behavior towards women. Colleagues shared memories of times where he displayed contempt for patients, showing a total lack of compassion. Williamson's manipulation extended to covering up the brutal passing. He admitted to police that he must have picked up a log, but conveniently claimed to have no memory of the incident. He directed authorities to Douglas's body buried in the garden of their rented farmhouse. The extent of Williamson's financial exploitation also came to light when family members provided statements talking about the deception that allowed him to continue abusing Douglas's finances for 3 years. The whole thing is a tragic tale about a guy who continued his lie for years, leaving a grieving family to grapple with the unsettling truth. And despite the uncovering of his crimes, justice was never served, as Williamson evaded trial by taking his own life while on bail. Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comment section what you would rather have. Never have to exercise again and have your perfect body, or never have to pay for food again.